Hello, everyone. If you like folk horror and you want a book that is so engaging and so well written that you'll be lost in this world for hours, then today's book is for you. It was fantastic. It has a lot of elements, and it's also very bloody and brutal. And we're going to talk about all that right now. All right. So our book today is called The 5 Turns of the Wheel by Stephanie Ellis. I was never, I didn't think I was ever into folk horror before. It was like one of these subgenres of the horror genre, if you know what I mean. And I wasn't really sure what it meant, and I kind of stuck to what I knew. But this year, I've really been getting into a lot of good ones. I've read 3 others besides this one in that category, and I've loved them all for different reasons. They're all very unique and different from each other, and this one here is absolutely no exception. This is, in my opinion, a phenomenal book, probably the best folk horror book I've read out of the 4 I've actually had the time to read. And you can just tell that this author has put a lot of work and a lot of love into the world she's building and into the characters that inhabit that world. And that comes through when you're reading. It's kind of like when somebody asks, what is the secret of cooking? And somebody will say, well, you got to put some love into it. Of course, that doesn't really mean anything. It's not an actual real ingredient, but you can tell when somebody has done that when you're eating as opposed to not, if that makes sense. And you can tell by reading this book that there's something in this author. She has really taken the time and put the care in for these world and these characters and made it so engaging that I didn't want to leave that world. But this book deals with 5 villages, idyllic countryside villages somewhere in Britain, away from mainstream civilization. And overseeing all of these villages in the human world is this shadow world, this dark world, unseen by human eyes unless they want you to see it. And it's run by the Umbrians and their god king Hual. And he is the Lord and Master of this area. He is in charge, and the shadow world knows it. All the villagers know it. And they're basically enslaved to this shadow world. And once a year, they sleep through most of the year, but once a year, there are rituals to be performed, sacrifices to be made, to give back to these overlords because they protect the people, they feed the people, they make sure the people supposedly get what they want. And so once a year, this ritual must take place over the course of a week. It's called the turning of the 5 wheels. And this is when the veil between the 2 worlds is at its weakest. And leading from the shadow world, leading these rituals are 3 different characters. We have Tommy, and Tommy is an interesting character. He is truly a sociopath. This man thing, whatever you want to call him, takes on kind of a shape of a human form, but he's definitely from the shadow world, from this underground realm. Not quite demon, not quite human. But even though he has a veneer of gentleness, and maybe some could call him charming at some point, he's a very sadistic, very cruel creature. He really enjoys the bloodlust that these rituals will bring forth, and he always looks forward to it. And he has this magical ability, he can see into the recesses of people's minds and into their souls and seek out information. Because if anybody thinks they're going against the Umbrian, if anybody is even thinking about rebelling or putting up resistance, they will be dealt with in a very brutal and bloody way. They do not put up with any kind of rebellion among these humans that they oversee. So even though he might appear conversational and gentle, he's always manipulating, always putting people against each other, and just enjoying that, and enjoying the prospect of all the blood that is going to be spilled during these rituals. And with him is somebody named the fiddler. Now, during the rituals, the fiddler will play his violin. He'll play tunes from the shadow world, from the Umbrian world. And it sort of acts as a sedative almost to the human ear. It hypnotizes people. So there are willing participants in the rituals that are going to take place, and kind of puts them at ease so that they're compliant and complacent. And then you have Betty, who's a monstrous hairy creature, and he likes to dress in women's dresses, and he is the god of the dance. Because as the fiddler is playing during these rituals, he portrays himself as a grotesque maiden of sorts, performing these lumbering, beastly dances. And all the villagers must dance with him during these rituals as a sign of their devotion and dedication to Hual. And these are the three characters that come up and perform the rituals in these 5 villages once a year. As far as the human characters go, we have the Wheelborns, and these are blood relatives. Somehow they're related by blood to these underground creatures, because during the time when they're above ground, they can mate, they can be with humans, and there's a deep connection there. There's a connection, a blood connection between this group of humans and the shadow world, these Umbrians down below. Unbeknownst to anybody, though, these humans are planning a rebellion. They've suffered enough. They feel the injustices and the slavery that they have, that they are slaves to the Umbrian must end, and they want to try to find a way to stop the turning of the wheel forever, so nobody else has to suffer, and they can get out from under the ownership of this dark world. And that's the basic story, but there's so much more going on here, and this book is very beautifully written. I loved finding out about both worlds, the world above and the world below, and of course the characters and the way they were presented and the way we find out information about them. Each revelation being more and more chilling as you realize how horrible and brutal these rituals actually are. And each turn of the wheel on each night, there are chapters devoted to each one, and they are horrible. This is where your nightmares are going to come in, my friends, because some of these scenes are going to be etched in your mind forever after you read this book. This is not a kind, gentle book when it comes to these things. It is very bloody and very terrifying. It will raise some hackles on the back of your neck and send some goosebumps going up and down your arm there. And because each ritual is different and requires sacrifice from the humans. And these could be men in some cases. These could be women in some cases. Children in some cases. And in the 5th turn of the wheel, it's even worse because a sacrifice is demanded of an unborn child. And both that child's blood and the blood of its mother must be spilled in the soil as a sacrifice to the gods below. And it's pretty terrible. So the creative ways this author has come up with to describe these rituals, and I mean, you can feel the pain and the fear of the people who are ultimately chosen for sacrifice as these horrible, brutal, torturous things happen to them in various degrees. And I'm not going to talk about any of that because it's something you have to read, because that's where you're going to you're going to know you're in the hands of a very capable horror author. Let's put it that way. So even though this book might be part fantasy and part horror, I firmly think it's in the horror category because it is bloody and it is very frightening to witness and know what these people are going through in this village. But underneath it all, it's a story about motherhood, and it's a story about a woman's love for her daughter and grandchild, soon-to-be grandchild, and the sacrifices a mother would make to ensure that the daughter and granddaughter are safe, even if it means knowing she is going to suffer very greatly for that decision. Because like I said, these creatures, these man creatures performing these rituals can seek out people's thoughts. They know all your secrets. They know who's plotting against them. They know what's going on. And it kind of comes down to good versus evil at a certain point. However, I spoke with the author on Twitter, and there is a sequel coming up. There's a sequel, and I am very happy for that because I would gladly jump back into this world anytime she wants to write about it. And it's coming out later this year. So you definitely need to pick up this book and get yourself caught up in this world because it's fantastic, it's horrifying, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. No complaints at all. I will leave a link down below to Amazon if you want to purchase it from there. The 5 Turns of the Wheel. I recommend it highly. I'll also leave a link down below to my social media. Join me on Twitter or Instagram there, and I'd be happy to have you. And as always, thank you for taking some of your time, spending it with me. I really appreciate you guys watching. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.